The night was cold, and the dim glow of the streetlights flickered as Officer Ryan and his K-9 partner, Shadow, patrolled the nearly empty bus terminal. Shadow was a veteran police dog, known for his sharp instincts and unwavering loyalty. As they walked past a row of abandoned luggage near the station's exit, Shadow suddenly froze. His ears perked up, nostrils flaring as he took in the scent. Then, without hesitation, he let out a deep growl, his body tensing. Ryan immediately knew something was wrong. "What's up, boy?" he murmured, gripping Shadow's leash. But before he could react, Shadow started barking, loud, urgent, and relentless. Passengers turned to look. A security guard rushed over. Ryan knelt down beside the suitcase Shadow was fixated on. It was an old, battered red suitcase with scratches along its edges. Something inside had triggered the dog's instincts. Taking no chances, Ryan radioed for backup. Minutes later, 2 more officers arrived. Carefully, they unzipped the suitcase. The moment they opened it, the air filled with a sickly, metallic scent. A collective gasp escaped their lips. Inside, wrapped in a thin, blood-stained blanket, was a newborn baby, barely alive, its tiny body shivering. Ryan's heart clenched. Shadow whimpered, nudging the infant with his nose. The baby's breath was shallow, but it was breathing. They had found it just in time. An ambulance was called, and the paramedics rushed to stabilize the baby. As the officers scanned the area for suspects, security footage revealed a woman abandoning the suitcase minutes before Shadow alerted them. The investigation was just beginning, but one thing was certain: Shadow had saved a life that night. The night air was thick with tension as Officer Ryan and his K-9 partner, Shadow, patrolled the nearly deserted bus terminal. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows across the worn-out floors. The station, though usually bustling during the day, had an unsettling stillness at this late hour. Shadow, a seasoned German shepherd with years of experience, walked beside Ryan, his ears twitching at the faintest sounds. They had done this routine hundreds of times, but tonight, something felt different. As they passed a row of benches near the station's exit, Shadow suddenly stopped. His body stiffened, his nose twitching furiously. Then, without warning, he let out a deep growl. Ryan tightened his grip on the leash. "What is it, boy?" he asked, his pulse quickening. Shadow's growl turned into frantic barking as he lunged toward a pile of abandoned luggage near the trash bins. The sound echoed through the empty station, drawing the attention of a few lingering passengers. Ryan followed Shadow's lead, scanning the suitcases. That's when he noticed it, a worn-out red suitcase, slightly ajar, with scratches and dirt smeared across its surface. The sight alone was unsettling, but the way Shadow was reacting told Ryan this was no ordinary piece of luggage. He immediately called for backup. "Dispatch, this is Officer Ryan. K-9 Shadow has identified a suspicious suitcase at the South Terminal, requesting additional units." Seconds felt like hours as Ryan cautiously approached the suitcase. He could hear a faint noise, soft, almost like a whimper. His chest tightened. By the time 2 more officers arrived, Shadow was circling the suitcase, barking relentlessly. With a deep breath, Ryan knelt down and carefully unzipped it. The moment he peeled back the top, the air filled with a sickening stench. His stomach twisted. Inside, wrapped in a thin, blood-stained blanket, was a newborn baby, barely clinging to life. Its tiny body trembled, its breath shallow and weak. One of the officers let out a horrified gasp. "Oh my God!" Ryan's heart pounded as he reached in and gently lifted the infant into his arms. The baby's skin was ice cold. It had been left here to die. "We need an ambulance now." Ryan barked into his radio. Shadow, no longer barking, let out a soft whimper, his nose nudging the baby as if trying to comfort it. Ryan swallowed hard, fighting the lump in his throat. Who could do something so cruel? Minutes later, paramedics rushed in, taking the baby from Ryan's arms and wrapping it in a thermal blanket. As they worked to stabilize the infant, the officers turned their attention to the station's security footage. The grainy black and white screen flickered to life, revealing a figure, A woman, hood pulled low over her face, placing the suitcase beside the bins just 10 minutes before Shadow alerted them. She stood there for a moment, hesitating, before quickly walking away, disappearing into the night. The officers exchanged grim looks. The search for her had just begun. But one thing was certain: if it hadn't been for Shadow, the baby wouldn't have survived the night. As the ambulance doors closed and sped off into the distance, Ryan knelt beside his partner, scratching behind his ears. "Good boy, Shadow," he murmured. "You saved a life tonight." And deep down, he knew they would stop at nothing to find the person responsible. The ambulance's siren faded into the distance, carrying the fragile newborn toward the nearest hospital. But for Officer Ryan and Shadow, the night was far from over. Ryan's eyes remained locked on the grainy security footage. The woman who had abandoned the suitcase moved with urgency, her hood obscuring most of her face. She had paused for only a second before vanishing into the night. "Can we zoom in on her?" Ryan asked, his voice tense. The security guard tapped a few keys, enlarging the footage. The resolution was poor, but they could make out the woman's posture, slightly hunched, one hand clutching her stomach. "She looks scared," muttered Officer Lisa, Ryan's partner, who had just arrived on the scene. Ryan nodded. She wasn't just dumping the baby. She was hesitating, like she wanted to stay but couldn't. Lisa crossed her arms. "Which means she might be in danger herself." The thought made Ryan's stomach twist. If she was a scared mother forced into abandoning her child, who was she running from? Just then, Shadow let out a low growl and turned toward the terminal's exit. His ears perked up, his nose twitching. Ryan followed his gaze toward the rain-slicked sidewalk outside. The station's automatic doors hissed open, letting in a cold gust of wind. The streets were nearly empty, but something felt off. Shadow stepped forward, sniffing the air, then let out a sharp bark. He bolted toward the exit. "Shadow, heel," Ryan called, but the K9 had already locked onto a scent. Trusting his partner's instincts, Ryan and Lisa sprinted after him. Shadow led them down a narrow alley behind the terminal, his nose to the wet pavement. A rustling noise came from behind a dumpster. Ryan reached for his flashlight, his hand instinctively hovering over his holster. "Police," he called out. "Come out slowly with your hands up." Silence. Then a faint, shaky breath. Ryan took a cautious step forward and shined his flashlight behind the dumpster. There, curled up against the cold brick wall, was a young woman. Her hoodie was soaked from the rain, her face pale and hollow. She clutched her stomach, eyes wide with fear. Lisa knelt beside her. "Are you hurt?" The woman's lips trembled. I had no choice," she whispered. "He was going to kill us." Ryan's blood ran cold. "Who?" Her eyes darted around, panic rising in her voice. "He's coming for me. He's watching." Shadow growled, ears pinned back. Ryan exchanged a tense look with Lisa. Whoever he was, they had just stepped into something far more dangerous than an abandoned baby case, and the real nightmare was only beginning. The young woman's body trembled as she pressed herself against the cold brick wall, her wide eyes darting between Ryan, Lisa, and Shadow. Ryan crouched to her level, keeping his voice calm. "You're safe now. Tell us, who's after you?" Tears welled in her eyes, but before she could answer, Shadow let out a low, guttural growl. His body stiffened, his sharp gaze locked on something in the darkness beyond the alley. Ryan's instincts flared. He turned his flashlight toward the far end of the alley, but the beam only revealed empty pavement and the faint shimmer of rain-slicked streets. "Lisa, watch her," Ryan ordered, rising to his feet. He rested a hand on his holstered weapon and took a cautious step forward. "Shadow, what is it?" The dog sniffed the air, his hackles raised. A sudden metallic clang echoed through the alley, like someone knocking over a trash can in the distance. Lisa pulled the woman closer, shielding her. "We need to get out of here, now." But before they could move, the woman gasped, her voice barely a whisper. "He's here." Ryan barely had time to react before the streetlights above them flickered, and then darkness. A power outage. The alley was now swallowed in eerie silence, except for the sound of dripping water and Shadow's steady growl. Then, from the shadows, a footstep. Ryan's grip tightened on his weapon. Police. Show yourself. Nothing. Lisa reached for her radio, but the woman suddenly grabbed her wrist, shaking her head frantically.
No.
If he hears the radio, he'll know exactly where we are. The darkness in the alleyway seemed to stretch endlessly, swallowing every inch of space between them and whatever, or whoever, was out there. Shadow's growl deepened, his stance rigid, every muscle in his body coiled like a spring ready to snap. Ryan's heartbeat pounded in his ears as he kept his flashlight pointed into the void, his other hand gripping his holstered weapon. The air felt heavier, charged with a presence unseen but undeniably close. The woman clutched Lisa's sleeve, her breath ragged. You don't understand, she whispered, eyes darting to the darkness.
He's not just a man.
He's a monster. Ryan exchanged a glance with Lisa. Was this woman in shock? Or was there something far worse at play? He didn't have time to figure it out. Another sound, this time a slow, deliberate scraping, like metal against concrete, echoed from the far end of the alley. Stay close, Ryan muttered, stepping forward with calculated caution. He raised his gun, sweeping his flashlight across the damp pavement. The glow illuminated old dumpsters, scattered trash, and nothing else. The alley was empty, but Shadow knew better. The dog's hackles remained raised, his tail rigid, his growl unrelenting. Ryan had learned to trust Shadow's instincts more than his own. If Shadow sensed something, it was there, whether Ryan could see it or not. A breath of wind brushed against the back of Ryan's neck, cold and unnatural. He stiffened. Lisa felt it too. She shivered, her grip tightening on the woman's arm. Did you feel that? She whispered. Before Ryan could respond, Shadow lunged forward, snarling as if he had been unleashed on an invisible force. His teeth snapped at empty air, his body twisting as if something unseen was right in front of him. Ryan's gut clenched. Shadow, heel. But the dog didn't listen. He lunged again, barking furiously, paws scraping against the pavement. Then something shifted. A movement so fast, so impossible, it made Ryan's stomach drop. A shadow moved, not Shadow, not theirs, but something else. It flickered across the alley wall, stretching unnaturally long, and then vanishing just as quickly. The woman whimpered, curling into herself. He found me. Then the smell hit them. Rotting flesh. Damp earth.
Blood.
Ryan recoiled, covering his nose. The scent was overpowering, seeping into his lungs like decay itself had taken a physical form. Lisa gagged, eyes watering, while Shadow barked wildly, spinning in circles as if surrounded. And then a voice.
Low.
Raspy. Just behind Ryan's ear. You should have left her. Ryan whipped around, gun raised, but there was no one there. The woman sobbed. He's here. You can't stop him. Lisa grabbed her by the shoulders. Who is he? What does he want? The woman's lips quivered as she choked out a single word. Death. The streetlights above flickered back on, casting pale yellow light over the alley. Ryan's breath came in short gasps as he scanned the area, guns still raised. Nothing. No movement. No figure. No trace of the source of that voice. But the scent of decay lingered. Shadow finally stopped barking, though his body remained tense. His ears twitched, as if still listening to something beyond their perception. Ryan wiped his forehead, his skin clammy despite the cold night. Lisa exhaled sharply. We need to get her somewhere safe.
Now.
Ryan nodded. Let's move. With Shadow leading the way, they carefully maneuvered out of the alley, never looking back. The woman clung to Lisa, her fragile body racked with silent sobs. They reached the patrol car in record time. Ryan opened the back door, helping the woman inside. Lisa took the passenger seat while Shadow jumped into his usual spot beside Ryan. As he started the car, he caught sight of something in the rearview mirror. A figure stood at the mouth of the alley.
Tall. Thin.
Motionless. Its head tilted slightly, as if watching. Ryan's blood ran cold. He hit the gas, speeding away from the station. He didn't need to look back to know that whatever it wasn't done with them yet. The car sped through the wet streets, headlights cutting through the darkness. Rain drizzled against the windshield, creating a rhythmic pattern that failed to calm Ryan's racing heart. His knuckles tightened around the steering wheel as he glanced at the rearview mirror again. The alley was long behind them, but that figure, tall, still, and watching, was burned into his mind. Lisa turned slightly in her seat to check on the woman in the back. She was curled up, her hoodie damp from the rain, her arms wrapped around herself as if trying to disappear. Her breathing was ragged, her face pale and hollow. "What's your name?" Lisa asked softly. For a moment, silence. Then, barely above a whisper, "Elena." Ryan kept his focus on the road. "Elena, who is he? Who are we dealing with?" Her lips trembled. I don't know his real name. No one does. But they call him the Hollow Man." Lisa frowned. "That sounds like a ghost story." Elena let out a choked laugh, hollow, broken. "I wish that's all he was." Ryan's jaw clenched. "He spoke to me, right in my ear. But when I turned, he was gone." A chill ran down Ryan's spine. "What do you mean?" She swallowed hard. "If he speaks to you, it means he's marked you." Lisa straightened. "Marked? For what?" Elena's fingers gripped the fabric of her hoodie so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Death." The word lingered in the car like a curse. Ryan kept driving, his mind racing. He had dealt with criminals, murderers, and the worst humanity had to offer. But this felt different. Elena's breath hitched. Then it's already too late. Shadow let out a low whine from the back seat. Ryan glanced at him through the mirror. The dog's ears were back, his body pressed against the seat as if he was trying to make himself smaller. Shadow was never afraid. Ryan turned to Lisa. "We're taking her to the station. We'll put out a bolo for the suspect and—" "No." Elena suddenly bolted upright. "You can't take me there. He'll find me." Lisa turned to her. "Elena, we can protect you." She shook her head violently. "You don't get it. You don't stop the Hollow Man. He follows. He finds you. He waits. And when you think you're safe," her voice cracked, "that's when he takes you." A sharp static noise suddenly filled the car. Ryan's police radio crackled to life, but the voice that came through wasn't dispatch. It was distorted, warped. A slow, rasping whisper slithered through the speakers. "Ryan, you should have left her." Ryan's blood ran cold. His foot pressed on the gas. "What the hell?" Lisa grabbed the radio. "Dispatch?
Come in."
"We have interference on the channel." Static. Then laughter. Slow. Hollow. Lisa's face turned pale. "Ryan, get us out of here."
"Now."
Ryan swerved onto an empty road, speeding toward the station despite Elena's protests. But as they turned a corner, Shadow suddenly let out a frantic bark. Ryan looked up. A figure stood in the middle of the road. The headlights illuminated it, but no features could be seen, just a tall, stretched shadow where a face should have been. It didn't move. It simply waited. Ryan slammed the brakes. The tire screeched, but the figure didn't flinch. For a split second, Ryan could have sworn its head tilted slightly, watching him, acknowledging him. Then, the streetlights above flickered. The figure was gone. But the moment it vanished, Elena let out a blood-curdling scream. Ryan turned to her, her body convulsed, her eyes rolling back as if something invisible had wrapped itself around her throat. "Elena!" Lisa tried to steady her. "What's happening?" Shadow barked wildly, snapping at empty air as if trying to fight something none of them could see. Then the temperature in the car dropped. Frost crept along the inside of the windows. Elena gasped for breath. "He's here," she choked. "He." Her body jerked. And suddenly, the car engine died. The headlights went out. Everything was swallowed in darkness. Then, in the silence, a whisper, low, amused, and right next to Ryan's ear. "Run." The car sat in the middle of the desolate road, lifeless. No engine, no lights, just cold, suffocating darkness. The only sounds were the rapid, shallow breaths of those inside and the faint patter of rain against the windshield. Ryan's hands clenched the wheel, his pulse hammering in his ears. Shadow stood rigid in the back seat, teeth bared, his low growl vibrating through the car like a warning. Lisa reached for her radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Lisa Carter. We are experiencing a critical static." Then, a voice. Not from the radio. Not from the car. From everywhere. "You should have left her." A slow, dragging whisper, like breath against frozen glass. Elena whimpered, curling into herself. "He's here. He's in the car." Ryan felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise. He turned his head, just enough to glance at the rearview mirror. And then he saw it. A shape in the back seat.
No.
Not a shape. A shadow.
Tall.
Stretched. Sitting between Elena and Shadow, but not touching them. Not human. Not real. And yet, undeniably there. Ryan's throat went dry. His fingers hovered over his holster, but what good was a gun against this? Lisa must have seen it too because her breath hitched. "Ryan." And then, Elena screamed. The shadow moved.
Fast.
It lunged toward her, and suddenly she was choking, her hands clawing at her throat as if invisible fingers had wrapped around her neck. "Elena!" Lisa unbuckled her seatbelt and reached for her. Ryan didn't think. He reacted. He grabbed his gun and twisted in his seat, aiming right at the shadow. "Let her go," he bellowed. Shadow snapped at the darkness, his teeth flashing, his growls turning into vicious, desperate barks. And then, the temperature dropped even further. The windows froze over completely, ice splintering across the glass like veins of a dying thing. Elena convulsed. Ryan pulled the trigger. The gunshot rang through the car. The bullet passed through nothing. Through emptiness. Through darkness itself. And then everything exploded. The windshield shattered, as if something had detonated from the inside out. Glass rained over them as the car rocked violently. And then, the lights came back on. The engine roared to life. Elena collapsed, gasping for air, clutching her throat. Shadow was still barking. No, snarling, his fur bristling as he stared at the empty space where the shadow had been. Ryan's heart pounded. He whipped his head around. The shadow was gone. The hollow man gone. But the air inside the car felt wrong, tainted, like something had been here and left a piece of itself behind. Lisa turned to Ryan, her face pale.
"Drive."
Ryan didn't hesitate. He slammed his foot on the gas, speeding toward the police station, not daring to look back, not daring to see if it was still watching. The police station, 2:37 a.m. The station was quiet. Too quiet. Ryan pulled into the lot, parking under the harsh glow of the streetlights. The second the car stopped, Elena flung the door open, stumbling out onto the pavement. Lisa followed, steadying her. Ryan exhaled sharply, running a shaking hand through his hair. Shadow jumped out, still alert, his ears flicking at every small sound. "We get her inside," Ryan said, gripping his gun.
"Now."
They hurried through the station doors. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the sterile air a stark contrast to what they had just experienced. Sergeant Miller looked up from his desk. "Ryan? Lisa? What the hell happened to you two?" Before they could answer, a voice came from behind them. A weak, hoarse whisper. "He's here." Ryan spun. Elena stood in the middle of the lobby, her body trembling. And then, the lights flickered. Every screen in the station, computer monitors, security cameras, even phones, went to static. The temperature plummeted. Shadow growled. And then, the station's emergency sirens blared. Red lights flashed. The backup generator kicked in. Yet somehow, the shadow still slithered into the room, stretching along the floor, the walls, the ceiling. Elena collapsed to her knees. "He followed us." Ryan raised his gun. Lisa grabbed her baton. Officers stood frozen, their confusion turning into sheer terror as the lights went out completely. And then, a whisper, right in Ryan's ear. "Run." The police station was drowning in darkness. The emergency sirens wailed through the halls, their red flashes barely piercing the void that had swallowed the room. The backup generator hummed, but it did nothing against the suffocating presence creeping into every corner. Ryan's breath came in short gasps. His gun felt useless in his grip. Beside him, Lisa clutched her baton, knuckles white. Officers froze at their desks, eyes wide, unsure whether this was some electrical failure or something worse. And then, the air shifted. Not a breeze, not movement, but a feeling. A weight pressing against Ryan's chest, wrapping around his ribs like invisible chains. It was watching. It was here. Shadow let out a snarl, his body low, his teeth bared. He wasn't barking anymore, this was something different. This was the growl of an animal standing at the edge of death. Ryan turned his head slowly. Elena was still on the floor. But she wasn't alone. A shadow loomed behind her. Not cast by light. Not born from a body. It was just there.
Tall.
Stretched. Featureless. The hollow man. Ryan's finger tensed on the trigger. Elena move. She didn't.
Couldn't.
She knelt in place, her breath coming in rapid, ragged gasps. Her eyes were locked forward, unblinking. Ryan took a step toward her. And everything stopped. The sirens. The generator. The flickering emergency lights. Silence. Then, Ryan. The voice slithered through the air. It wasn't a whisper. It was inside him, crawling through his skull like fingers pressing against his brain. Ryan staggered back, pressing his palm to his temple. The hollow man moved. Not a step. Not a lunge. 1 second. It was behind Elena. The next, it was inches from Ryan's face. A choking scent filled his lungs.
Rot. Soil. Decay.
Cold fingers brushed his cheek. And Ryan felt himself slip. Not physically. Not in body. But in something else. Like he was being pulled out of himself. Dragged away. The world twisted. He was somewhere else. Somewhere
Else.
Ryan stood in a field.
Barren.
Endless. A sky that wasn't black, but void. A nothingness stretching into forever. The air was heavy, thick, pressing down on his skin. And ahead of him, a row of figures. Lined up. Still. Faceless. Some were in police uniforms. Others in civilian clothes. Some children. Ryan's breath hitched. One of them turned. A little girl. No older than 6. Her eyes were wrong. "He took me first," she whispered. Ryan stumbled back. The other figures turned too. More voices. "He took me too. We ran. It didn't matter. He always wins." Ryan clutched his head.
No.
This isn't real. This isn't. A cold hand closed around his throat, and he was yanked back. The police station, reality. Ryan gasped, crashing onto the floor. His vision swam. His body trembled violently, like he'd been plunged into ice water. Lisa was kneeling over him, shaking him. "Ryan. Ryan." His lungs burned. He sat up, coughing, his eyes darting around. The station was back. The red emergency lights flickered. Officers were moving, talking, shouting. The hollow man was gone. Ryan's hands clenched into fists. Shadow pressed against him, whining softly. Lisa's expression was tight. "Ryan, what the hell just happened?" Ryan looked at Elena. She was still curled on the floor, hugging her knees, rocking back and forth. Her whisper barely reached him. "He's not done yet." Ryan closed his eyes. He already knew that. Because when the hollow man had touched him, when he had left that other place, something had followed him back. The police station felt heavier now. Even after the hollow man had vanished, its presence still lingered, like a sickness in the air. Ryan could feel it in his chest, in his bones. Whatever happened to him in that void, whatever touched him, hadn't let go. Lisa helped him to his feet, her eyes filled with unspoken questions. She had seen him collapse, had seen his body go cold. But there was no time to explain. Because Elena was still shaking on the floor. Because Shadow was still growling at nothing. Because Ryan knew this wasn't over yet. The last stand. Sergeant Miller rushed into the room, his gun drawn. What the hell is going on in here? Lisa turned to him, her voice sharp. Sir, we need to put the station on lockdown.
Now.
Miller scowled. You're joking, right? Ryan stepped forward, his voice hoarse. This isn't a joke. We're all in danger. Miller looked at them, then at Elena, curled up like a child, then at Shadow, who still had his teeth bared. Something in his face shifted. He grabbed his radio. All units, secure the exits. Officers moved fast, locking the main doors, sealing every entrance. But Ryan knew it wouldn't matter. The Hollow Man didn't use doors. Lisa crouched beside Elena, speaking softly. Elena, listen to me. How do we stop him? Elena slowly raised her head. Her eyes were sunken, distant, like she wasn't fully here anymore. You don't. Her voice was barely a whisper. Lisa clenched her jaw. There has to be a way. Elena swallowed hard. He doesn't just take people. He feeds on them. Their fear, their pain. The more afraid we are, the stronger he gets. Ryan felt his stomach drop. That's why it was getting worse. Every time they panicked, every time someone screamed, every time Ryan hesitated, they were feeding it. Then, the lights cut out again. Total darkness. A single, sharp breath echoed in the silence.
Not from any of them.
From something else. Ryan's fingers wrapped around his gun, but deep down, he knew it was useless. The Hollow Man was here. Then, the sound of a chair scraping across the floor.
Soft.
Deliberate. Something was moving. Shadow launched himself into the darkness, barking wildly. And then, a scream. Not from Elena. Not from Lisa. From one of the officers. A gunshot rang out. Chaos erupted. Ryan felt something brush against him. Cold, thin, wrong. He turned, swinging his flashlight, but the beam barely cut through the void. Another scream. Then, a voice.
Deep. Slow.
You brought her here, Ryan. Ryan's breath hitched. The Hollow Man was talking to him, directly now. You should have left her. Ryan clenched his jaw.
No.
He wasn't going to let this thing play with his head. Elena, he shouted. If fear makes him stronger, what weakens him? Elena was gasping, her hands gripping her temples. I don't think. Lisa grabbed her by the shoulders. There has to be something. Elena squeezed her eyes shut. Her lips moved, forming words so soft they barely made a sound. Then, the darkness rippled. Ryan felt it.
A shift.
Elena, he demanded. What is it? She opened her eyes. And for the first time, there was something other than fear in them. I remember, she whispered. He took my sister. But she wasn't afraid. Ryan's pulse pounded. Lisa stared at her. What happened to her? Elena's voice shook. He couldn't take her.
He tried.
But she laughed at him. Ryan turned sharply to Lisa. It feeds on fear. Lisa's eyes widened. Then what happens if we don't give it any? Another ripple in the air. The Hollow Man felt it too. A low hiss crawled through the room, like wind through dead leaves. Shadow stopped growling. And suddenly, Ryan understood. No more fear, he said. Lisa exhaled sharply, gripping her baton. How do you stop being afraid of that? Ryan took a step forward, into the dark. And he laughed. A sharp, dry chuckle. Forced, strained, but real. Lisa hesitated, then she laughed. A short, nervous, half chuckle. Another officer did the same. Then another. The Hollow Man hissed. The darkness shuddered. Elena closed her eyes, tears rolling down her cheeks. And then she laughed. A broken, fragile sound. But it wasn't fear anymore. The station groaned. The walls trembled. And then, the darkness collapsed in on itself, like smoke sucked through a vacuum, like a nightmare vanishing with the morning light. The weight lifted. The cold vanished. And the lights flickered back on. Ryan blinked. His heart was still hammering. Shadow panted at his feet, ears twitching. Lisa exhaled. Is it? Ryan turned. Elena was still on the floor, but she was smiling. A small, relieved, human smile. He's gone, she whispered. The aftermath. The station was left in stunned silence. Officers murmured, shaken, trying to comprehend what had just happened. Miller looked at Ryan, his face pale. What the hell was that? Ryan swallowed. A nightmare. Elena wiped her face, her body still trembling. He won't come back. Not to me. Not to anyone here. Lisa sat down heavily. Good. Ryan looked at Shadow, who wagged his tail slowly. Maybe it was over. Maybe. But Ryan knew one thing for sure. Fear was dangerous. But facing it, that was what saved them.
The end.